Hello ladies, Sian Burton here, your marketing and scaling expert for women in private practice. And today I want to talk to you about the difference between scaling and growing, because it's a question I get asked a lot by women, like, what do you mean by scaling? Like, is that different to growing or is it the same? So we're going to be talking about the difference between those two things and why that is fundamentally important to your success this year in 2024. So let's dig into the difference between scaling and growing, because many of you will not be clear on what those two things are, and there is a significant difference between the two, and they have a huge impact on your ability to be profitable. So growing is where you simply get bigger. So you don't necessarily get more profitable and you don't necessarily optimize as you grow, but you simply get bigger. So if you've gone from being 2 team members with you taking home $10,000 a month and having a 25% profit margin, and you're now 4 team members and you're taking home $2,000 a month with a negligible profit margin, then you have grown. You've got more people, but you haven't necessarily optimized the things that you're doing, and you haven't fully utilized the assets and resources available to you. The business has simply got bigger. And if you're going for the vanity metrics of, I have $1 million revenue and I have a team of 25, then go for your life with growing a bigger business. And this is what you will routinely hear in coaching programs and communities where the masculine energy is very dominant, because it is very egocentric, and often it is about bigger is better, right? We all know this about the masculine energy, but bigger isn't always better. In fact, most of the women I work with will tell you that bigger is not better. I spoke to 2 ladies today who decided to join Success Without Sacrifice. There is 2 of them, and they're making $50,000 a month between them in the practice and paying themselves amazingly well. And we were talking about how there's no point growing for the sake of growing if it means that they end up making less and working harder. But that is unfortunately what happens if you just grow a business and you don't understand the difference between growing and scaling. So what's scaling? Let's talk about that, because that's the important bit that I want you to take from today's session. When you scale a business, you maximize all of the assets and resources available to the business before you grow it. So how I routinely see this happen, the difference between the two, is that let's say you've got 2 therapists who are 70% full, but you're struggling to fill the rest of their hours. What people will often do is bring another therapist in to get access to more hours than the ones that clients routinely want to have. And so they've grown, but now they've got 3 people who are working at 60% capacity. Now they're managing 3 people. Now they have 3 people using an EMR or practice management system. Now they've got 3 people and they need 3 admins. Now they need admin to cover the 3 people. They're not utilizing the resources to their maximum effect. They're just growing the size of their team. If you scaled that same business, then you would fill that team to 100% capacity before you took on another team member. You would make sure that everyone is being used to their optimum and providing as much value and resource back to the business as possible before you bring another team member on. You would be looking at the most effective ways to implement operation systems, or here's another example. So oftentimes people will outsource their call handling when they're small, but it's quite expensive. Now that's smart if you're small, because it's cheaper than having someone sit at a desk for most of the day not answering the phone. But if you just grow and you grow the volume of call handling you have outsourced, then actually that's really expensive and it's not scaled because you're not optimizing that to its most effectiveness. There comes a point where it makes sense to hire somebody to sit inside your practice, because whilst they might not answer the phone all day, it becomes more cost effective and is a better use of your financial resources than paying an outsourced company to do that thing. So hopefully this is kind of making sense about the difference between just getting bigger and becoming bigger but more profitable and more streamlined in the process. Because actually that streamlined piece is the final piece that I want to talk about, because this is where it hurts. Maybe not, I didn't say most, but the not being paid probably hurts the most. But there is literally nothing worse than not being paid from your practice and it consuming every waking moment. And it's actually really quite painful to be being paid really well from your practice, but it consuming every waking moment too. And you know, working 50, 60-hour weeks, there comes a point where no amount of money makes that worthwhile. And I've had lots of people describe their practices as golden handcuffs because they make, you know, $200,000-$300,000 a year from it, but they can't go on holiday. They can't do any of the things they want to do. They're working 60 hours a week and they're like, this wasn't what I wanted either. Like, sure, the money's great, but actually the freedom is what I really want. And so when practices grow, they just get bigger and bigger and bigger, and they often get more complicated as they get bigger. More personalities, more people to manage, more queries, more concerns, more people to pay. Like, it just gets bigger and more complicated as you grow. When you scale, you ensure that as the business gets bigger, you streamline systems and processes to make it simpler. So when you grow, it gets more complicated. When you scale, it gets simpler, because at each stage, you're saying, how can we systematize this? How can we optimize this? How can we streamline this to make it easier, simpler, less complicated for everybody? How can we reduce the amount of paperwork we're doing? How can we reduce the amount of manual hours that are required? So as you scale a business, it gets simpler and easier to run. So there are plenty of $1 million businesses that have grown to that point and are consuming time, resources, and energy from their owner, and, you know, are questionably whether it's worth it or not. And there are lots of scaled practices, particularly people who come through Success Without Sacrifice, who are running businesses that are highly profitable and require very little of their time and energy in order to create that outcome. So hopefully that gives you some understanding of the difference between growing and scaling. Now, I'm very, very passionate about helping women to scale their practices to 7 figures, not grow their practices to 7 figures. Because yes, it might take a bit longer and it might require a bit more strategy and energy and focus to be keep it on track, to keep it going the way you want it to, and have difficult conversations sometimes. But it will not take as much energy when you're there as a practice that has grown haphazardly and just is off doing its own thing. It's kind of, it's a bit like parenting, right? You put the work in at the time to get the great outcome at the end with a child around boundaries. If you don't put boundaries in place, this is easier in the moment, but in the long term, it's really not. It's harder. Think of scaling and growth like that. It's like, one's putting in boundaries around a toddler, and having a happy, chilled, well-rounded teenager, if they exist. And growth is like the toddler that you let run the roost, and that by the time they're a teenager is like running the whole house. Think of it like that. So lots of women come to me and say, okay, I've been in those circles where people are growing and they're banging their chests and they're saying how amazing they are, and they're competing with each other, and they're talking about how much money they're making in revenue. That's not me, and that's not what I want. I want to scale my business so that it's easier as I do it and I make more money as I go. If that resonates for you and you'd like to spend some time with me and our amazing client community, learning how to scale your practice in a way that aligns with your feminine values and feels really good and honors your family commitments, then I would really like to invite you to join us at my Feminine Way to Scale retreat. We have one coming up in April in Sedona, Arizona, and one coming up in May on the Gold Coast in Queensland. That is a 2-day retreat event with myself. It's actually our client annual retreat, so it's not a sales event, it's not a sales pitch. It is a very intimate event that I host with my clients in Success Without Sacrifice, that we are opening up the doors to a select group of women to join us. Now, it is by application because I'm very mindful of the community that we have and the environment that we build, and that I really want to protect that at the retreats. So you will need to let us know if you're interested, and then we will organise for you to have a call with one of our team, just so we can make sure that it's going to be the right fit for you and you're going to be the right fit for the event. But this is going to be a game-changing event. It's literally going to change your perspective on everything when it comes to your business, what you believe you're capable of, what you believe your business is capable of, what you feel you deserve. And you're going to leave with some really tangible outcomes that are going to make a massive impact in your practice in the first couple of weeks after you get back. So if you would like to try out coaching with me and see what it's like to be in Success Without Sacrifice, see what it's like to be around the women who work with me, and you'd really like to learn how to scale your practice instead of it growing haphazardly, then either comment below or pop me a message, and we can arrange a time for you to catch up with one of our team and just find out more about what the event is, what the investment is, and whether you might be a good fit. And we can just find a bit more about your practice and make sure that it's going to be a good fit for you. Just on that, it really is only suitable for people who have a team, because what we're talking about is about leveraging your team and how you can scale. That requires people working for you in order to be able to scale. So whilst I would love to hang out with you, if you don't have a team, it's really not going to be an effective use of your time, and definitely not an effective use of your dollars either in the investment. So comment below if you're keen, and we will touch base with you and arrange a time to catch up. If you have any questions about growing versus scaling, then put them in the comments. I'm really excited to be chatting with you about this topic. In case you can't tell, I'm very passionate about it. So that's all from me this week. Look forward to seeing you guys next week and sharing some more insights with you. I hope you have an amazing week in the meantime, and don't forget to comment below if you are keen to join us at the retreat.